Welcome to the RetailWire podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode here on the RetailWire podcast. My name is Brian, I'm your host, and joining me in the studio today, I've got a really fun conversation. If you are a pet owner or pet parent, however you want to call yourself, if you love furry friends, then this show is for you. This podcast is for you, because joining me in the studio today, I have a guest who knows a thing or two about pets and merchandising for them. I've got Kristin Shane. She is the Chief Merchandising Officer for PetSmart. So let's jump in. I'm just going to roll right into this. Kristin, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Brian. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
This is exciting. This is really good. I'm loving this because, I mean, I love pets, right? We were talking a little off camera, and I love pets. I've got my dogs. I'm a dog guy. I don't have a thing against cats, but I'm a dog guy, right? And so pets are good friends. They're great to have around, right? So I can't imagine being in a position like the Chief Merchandising Officer, being able to be around the pet category and pet world all the time. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into this.
No, I appreciate it. You know, I'm also a pet person, and you mentioned furry friends. I will say we love furry friends, but we also love scaly friends. We love fish.
Feathered friends.
We love all the pets. So not just dogs and cats, all of them.
No. And you bring up a great point. Y'all have an incredible assortment of stuff available, right? Like, I'm not doing a sales pitch here, but like, legit, I am blown away every time I walk into the PetSmart here in Rogers, Arkansas, at just the vast volume of what y'all have. So before we go too far down that, I gotta say, how'd you get in? This is really a cool area to be in.
No, I appreciate it. Pet is a really fun business to be in. And I have to say, just even in our office, like, you come to work and everybody brings their dog to work. We even have cats here. I remember my first day, I've been at PetSmart now about 4 years. My first day in the office, I saw this like plastic ball sort of rolling around the office, and there's a hamster. I mean, they're all here. Snakes, you name it, they're here. We love pets. I have 2 dogs. One, I have a Frenchie named Archie, and then I have a Vizsla named Ruby. I usually bring the Vizsla to work. We were talking earlier, I didn't bring her today. It was a little bit of a crazy day, but we have a dog park here on campus. Like, we sort of live the life here, and we'll talk a lot about the products and the merchandising. We test everything here. It's really easy to do because all the pets are in the office. And so if I showed you, like, I have a dog bed, I have crates, I have toys, like, they're sort of everywhere. So it's a really fun place to be. You know, I haven't been in pet my whole career, though. My career has basically been in retail. And when you're in retail, you find yourself in a lot of different businesses. So I spent the majority of my retail career at Target, but I started in consulting at Accenture. I've run a lot of different businesses in retail, including candy. I actually ran the pet business at Target in 2008. You know, I ran the movie business. I ran a number of grocery businesses. I ran the beauty business. So retail is really about just really understanding the consumer and understanding where the consumer's at and how you solve problems for her. And so if you can figure that out, you can usually be successful. And in the pet business, the emotional connection, as you said, that you have to your pets is huge. So it's a really fun business to be in.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I know recently we did an article on RetailWire, and it was talking about how, you know, will pets feel the effects of any recession, right? Yeah. Not just like the recession, but like any downturn in economy. And it's like, no, we are so protective of our friends and our pets that usually the family pet will never know that, you know, you're not going to change their food because of, you know, you're going to adjust your own food probably first. Yeah. And it's just really funny how we do that. So
yeah, pet has been a really resilient category. We know about 68% of households have pets. And even through, you alluded to the pandemic boom where everybody has a pet, the 68% has sort of held true. It's just, now how many pets do you have, Brian?
Yeah. So everybody amplified the numbers of
Uh-huh.
pets.
So now
Yeah.
everybody added to their sort of family. So now they have
Yep.
2 dogs instead of 1 dog, or they added some fish, or they added a, bearded dragon, whatever suits your fancy. So
Yeah.
the household penetration has remained pretty consistent. It's just number of pets.
Yeah. I'm going to take a rabbit trail for just a second and say, what is one of the most unique pets that you have seen just in around the office there that is like, you mentioned bearded dragons and things like that, or
Yeah.
gerbils around. Like, what has been one of the most unique things that you've seen around there?
Well, I have a few answers for that. I guess I
Oh,
just
okay.
was not prepared to be in an office where there were snakes.
Okay. All
Like,
right.
I mean, you spend most of your career thinking about, how you hone your executive presence, and, you kind of keep a cool head. And like you see a snake and you're like, ah, what is
Yeah.
that? So that's one. I think another unique one is, um, and don't judge, because all pet
Good.
parents love their pets just like
Oh,
you love
absolutely.
Shadow and Rogue. Okay, so we sell
Yeah.
tarantulas.
Absolutely.
There are
I
pet
was going to ask
parents.
if it was a cockroach because I've seen people have pet cockroaches, like the
Yes.
big ones, and I'm like, that's actually impressive. The things that they're capable of doing is actually impressive. So, not for
Yeah.
me, but
Yes. And
whatever.
so, and then when you think about aquatics, we sell shrimp, we sell, tons of different species of fish. So
Yeah.
there's a lot there.
If I ever owned a pet shrimp, I would have to name him Pepe after the Muppets, right? I'm a Muppet fan. I love them. So,
Yes.
I would definitely have to do that.
That's awesome.
So, so you came in to, so you said you've run pet at Target. You've been involved in a lot of different roles though, right? In
Yeah.
retail. So I think that's one of the coolest things I continue to hear from any guest is just how flexible the world of retail is, and like how dynamic it can be where, hey, if you're either wanting a shift or maybe there just needs to be a shift based on demand, you're able to kind of go back and forth, and you're able to move around laterally or up and down. And now you find yourself as the chief merchandising officer here at PetSmart, which again I just think is super cool. So you actually get to be the one kind of, tell me if I'm wrong, you're kind of picking out what is getting ready to be shelved and kind of like what those new trends, you're keeping an eye on all that. And I'd imagine, do you go to shows and everything, that you're really out there on that front end, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, you know, I have an amazing team that does a phenomenal job really keeping pulse on what pet parents want. And look, I think in retail, you're right. Like, you know, most retail executives have experience running a lot of different businesses, and
Yep.
every marketplace has its own unique challenges.
Yep.
But I think the mantra that I try and instill is it's just understanding the consumer and solving problems for them. And so to the extent that we can keep it that simple, we
Yeah.
know we'll win. And so, our mission is to deepen the bond between pets and pet parents. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. We get to decide, like, what are the products that help us do that. And so I'm excited to talk about some of the things that we've got in the store and
Yeah.
online to help us do that. And look, as a retail executive, you take some swings and hopefully they work, but sometimes they don't, and you just keep going and putting things out there that you think are going to resonate with, in my case, with pet parents.
Yeah. Well, so let's go back. You mentioned a while ago, obviously we talked pandemic stuff because that shifted buying patterns for everybody, right?
Yeah.
And not just pet category, everything. So it was crazy to see that. But when I think, and you actually touched already on one of the questions I was going to have was, what happened during the pandemic to pet
Yeah.
owners, and you said they grew their family, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're home more, you're able to go out more. I think everybody had a really great amount of flexibility, and I think that's one of the coolest things that came out of the pandemic, really, if I'm being honest. I think that's one of the coolest things. is seeing how many meetings could have been emails, and
Right?
now we can actually be
Totally.
on a call, walking our dog or playing with the bird or whatever else, and like you're able to have fun. And so that, I could see that people, just wanting to bring it in. What was there anything that was surprising that kind of jumped out during the pandemic, that maybe, obviously the growth of the pet family is one thing, but was there anything that was like surprising to you guys about, once you really started seeing different trends emerging during that time, or what?
Yeah, I think there are two trends that we saw that emerged through the pandemic, one of which has stuck. The
Okay.
other is something that was sort of unique to that time that we've had to manage through. So I'll start with that one because it's not as fun.
Okay. All
So
right.
so so when people were home, they sort of made two decisions. Or sometimes they made both decisions, right? So when you're home with Shadow and Rogue, you're like, oh, Shadow needs a new collar, or like her
Mm-hmm.
bed's looking a little shabby, or so like you the consumer bought a lot more discretionary items because they were with their pets all the time. And so the toys business, the collar business, the beds business, all those sort of discretionary businesses saw
Yep.
just a huge amount of growth. And so part of that was you went from one dog to two dogs, or one cat to two cats. Um, but part of it was I have to look at the bed and I see that
Yeah.
it's just more obvious to me that
Well, yeah.
that they
You
need a
start
new one.
seeing that's more worn, right?
Yes.
You start seeing the things that previously you were probably in and out. You're feeding them, you're
Yes.
taking them outside, you're letting them have some playtime, and then you're like, oh, that's not a big deal.
Yes.
But then you're like, oh, I guess that rope toy is pretty worn out, or
Yes.
like you're saying, the bed is kind of, it has a little divot in the middle, and it's probably not as comfy for them. And okay, they're a little more restless at night or something like that. So yeah, I could see that. I
Yeah,
could definitely see that.
so you translate that into, okay, so what does that mean for like a retailer or a team? So
Yeah.
we're chasing into that demand because that was something that we didn't anticipate, right? Like when COVID hit, like I would have been fired if I would have been like, our business is going to go bonkers. Like everybody was just like batten down the hatches. Nobody
Oh
was
yeah.
clear on what was happening. And so, I think for us, it was like, okay, we're now seeing this behavior from pet parents. So we're chasing into this business, a lot of which is produced overseas. And so the team did everything that they could to maximize the business. And now here we are, I'm back in the office. A lot of people are back in the office. Most of us are still flexible. And I agree with your comment. Like that's one thing that I think is a blessing from the pandemic is we sort of realized a new sort of balance. But I don't look at the shabby bed every single day. And so we're seeing that business soften a little bit. It's more discretionary. We're in an environment now where inflation is a significant factor. And so, managing through that is sort of what we do. So that is one trend. The other trend that has stuck, which I'm really excited about, is if you think about pre-pandemic, we had this category called travel. And it was
Okay.
like kind of utilitarian. It was like, this is the bag the black bag that you have to buy for the dog if you're going to take him on the plane. Or, here's the sort of utilitarian seatbelt harness that you're going to put on the dog. Well, going through COVID, we've decided we want to take our pet everywhere and make it cute, because I don't want the black carrier. I want something that looks cute and fun, whether it's, I want to take my pet with me to the soccer practice. So I want to make sure they've got a cooling mat and a sunshade, or I'm going to travel with my pet. And so I want to make sure the carrier meets my lifestyle and the aesthetic of my dog. So that business, like we call it pet on the go. It's really evolved from this sort of utilitarian travel business to take my dog to brunch and then we're going shopping and we may go, to the park. And so what are all the accessories that we want to make sure to prep our pet parents to have a successful date with their pet. And that is not something that we thought about pre-pandemic.
Well, no, and I think that's you're nailing it there. I think that's where I've seen so many more people taking their pets out, right? And that has continued. Like you said, that's not something that just went away after the pandemic died down and people start going back to work. They're like, no, I'm taking the dog or the cat, or I've seen people walking around with a macaw. Like,
Yes.
come on, let's.
Yes.
They're just walking around, and it's just really cool to see that there's a lot more function or a lot more form to the function now.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool to see because, one thing that sprang to mind there was it doesn't matter if you're a guy, girl, it doesn't matter. Like you want to I see people that really want to accessorize that match their pet. Right. And
Yeah.
so you have a human category and you have a pet category. And thankfully there's some product, manufacturers out there that are like, hey, what if we got together with you?
Yes.
And then suddenly you can look just like your little friend.
Yes.
And so I love stuff like that. I'm a total nerd whenever it comes to that. Like people see me, they see the beard and like, oh, rough and tumble guy. And it's like, I can be, but I still love pets. I got that soft spot.
You're not afraid to put a dog in a backpack and.
Oh no. When I was actually stuck at home during that time, one of the biggest things that I did see come across my Instagram feed was, I cannot remember the name of them, but it's a backpack bag for your dog, and it's really perfect, and so it keeps them all nice and safe. It keeps them tucked in where they're not clawing at you. They can feel secure because if anybody's ever carried a large dog, that they get really nervous and really scared, and then they can hurt you or hurt themselves by flopping and floundering to get out. And so the bags that I saw were just so impressive because I've got friends with huskies. They want to take their dogs out somewhere, but they also know they can't just let the dog walk loose in certain spaces, right? Like there's certain spaces that you just don't want to trust a husky to be still in.
Right.
And so I think that's super cool. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
I love seeing that. And I think the other thing that came to mind with dog on the go, have you seen, there's a picture floating around the internet. I'm sure there's tons of them at this point, but I think it was New York that has the no dogs on subways rule unless they can fit in a bag.
Yes.
And I saw somebody with like 120-pound husky in
a
IKEA bag with holes out.
Yes.
And the dog's literally standing on the ground, and the person has the bag on their shoulder, and it's just perfect. So,
and I think it just speaks to like pet parents will go to such huge lengths to keep their pet with them.
Hey, look, it's in a bag. It's going.
Yeah. Well, and you're even seeing now, just even business owners, restaurants are just far more liberal in letting. I mean, they've just become part of our lives, which I love.
Well, and exactly. It's like I think they've stuck very firm where they need to be, like none in food prep spaces, but otherwise it's like big deal, especially if it's a cafe with like a little front sidewalk area or like an entry area. Like, have fun. Just bring them. They're well behaved. As long as they're well behaved, treat the pets the same way as a kid. As long as you're well behaved, come on in. Let's go. But well, that's awesome. So you've seen some really cool trends happen, and I think it's so funny. Like that was one of my biggest questions for you. Was just like, what happened during that time? Because I know it turned the whole world upside down. Mm-hmm. And so now you're kind of we're moving past the pandemic, right? And we're headed into what's currently going on at PetSmart. Like, is there any projects that you guys are just really that you're specifically super pumped about? Any initiatives or anything for that customer experience, right? Like we're coming back and people, I would imagine you're seeing shopper numbers go up in the stores, right?
Yeah, for sure. For us, if the mission is always to keep pace with the customer and make sure that you're solving problems, and we call our customer her. So it's predominantly female. Obviously we have male customers. But I think if that's our mission, just to continue to solve problems for the customer, there are tons of initiatives that the buying teams specifically are focused on to make sure that we do that well. So, for example, if you walked into our stores today, we're starting to set Halloween, which I cannot believe it. It's only August 14th. But, to your earlier point, we want our pets in our lives for everything. And so we want to take them with us, trick or treating, or we want them to be part of the holiday. And so, we've got costumes, we've got safety, lights that we can put on the dog to make sure that they're safe when they're trick or treating. We have a back to school assortment. If you went into our stores in the summer, we had a huge sprinkler selection that your dog could run through over the side, like a slip and slide. I mean, so we just try and really, we have a huge assortment of products. Obviously, food is our biggest business, but the bond between pet and pet parent comes to life in those sort of moments. Like, oh, of course I'm going to buy the hot dog costume for Ruby this year. Like, of course I'm going to make sure that my dog has an ugly sweater for the Christmas picture, right? Of course I'm going to make sure that when we get into January, she's got the funny sort of dumbbell toy because we're all trying to get in shape. And so those are the kinds of things that the team is forever thinking about. What is going on in the mind of the pet parent right now that we want to make sure that we're relevant for? So it's things like that. I would also say, the pet industry is incredibly resilient because, to your earlier point, we treat our pets like kids. So it's not like, if we're going into a recession or inflation is high or we have to start paying back our student loans next month or whatever the scenario is, we're going to deprioritize the pet. But we are in a significant inflationary environment and we are seeing the market start to contract a little bit. And so for us, it's less about, she's pulling back and more about, okay, well, let's design into more value price points. So for example, our costumes last year were $24.99. We started to see an economic contraction and inflation start to go up. And we were like, wow, gas is really expensive. Eggs, bread, milk, really expensive. We can't we are not doing our jobs if she is choosing not to put the dog in a hot dog costume because it's too expensive. So this year, the hot dog costume is $19.99. It's still super cute. You'll still love all the, exactly. Go get it now.
I know. Let's get it.
So the team is focused on how do we just bring retails down so that it's an easier purchase for her and she can still celebrate those moments. Her dog food, no matter where you're buying it, is more expensive this year than it was last year. And so it's up to us to figure out how to engineer retails. A third of our business is proprietary brand, which means we design it, we source it, we have offices in Asia, that are helping to manufacture the goods. And so we get to say, hey, how do we make the hot dog costume $5 less and then go do it, which is really exciting.
That's really cool. I think I didn't realize that a third of your business is proprietary. That's fantastic. So, I mean, that gives you so much more creativity, right? That gives you more flexibility and oh my goodness.
It's great because then we don't have to wait for manufacturers to figure it out. We can actually go do it ourselves. And our proprietary brands are in every single category we play in, whether it's, food or, in aquatics, the top brand in aquatics in the whole marketplace is Top Fin. And that's our proprietary brand. So
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we pride ourselves on that, but we also recognize the responsibility we have to the customer to make sure that, yes, a third of it is proprietary brand. And I challenge you to go in our stores. You should look at our proprietary brands. And then my hope is, I'm sure you'll have some feedback because you're a discerning customer, but my hope is you say to me, Kristin, every single proprietary brand's at a great value, whether it's our authority science, food, whether it's toys, that is our mission to deliver incredible quality at an amazing value.
Well, and you do that. I think, to your earlier point too, you're talking about we're in such this crazy inflationary period right now. I just, the thing that popped out, that I heard from you there was your customers, your shoppers, your friends have enough to worry about right now. The hot dog costume shouldn't be one of those things,
a
right?
hundred
Like, shouldn't
percent.
be something to worry about. And so you guys are taking that and reducing that barrier to still have fun, still be able to enjoy your pet, still be able to care for him in such a great way. And it's like, okay, yeah, we can trim this a little bit. We can adjust over here. We can shift this. And I think that's really good. That's one thing that I have always been, and I'm not just saying this because we're on the show now, but like that is one thing I've always been impressed with PetSmart, and everything. It always just seems to flow really well together, and the stores and the people that are there seem to genuinely care about that whole pet experience, right? And so it's funny you said you look for everything to be a great value, and that is where, in my brain, you think private label, and there's other great value private labels out there,
There
that
are. Yes.
I did there.
I
Yeah,
see what
I
you did
didn't say
there.
it, but used to you thought of a private label maybe being, cheap, and you thought of it being not as good quality. And I gotta say, I've seen some of the private label stuff in your stores, and it is incredible. Like, there's an equal match, right? There's nothing, you're not lacking in quality anywhere.
Yeah.
um I think that's super great because, I think we've seen, and we're continuing to see, the rise of private label really making an impact in stores, and being able to kind of just, to really offer that more custom experience to each store, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think you nailed it. Like that has to be sort of table stakes. And it can't be cheap. Like our customer is super savvy, like, and she shops with this in her hand, with her phone in her hand, right? And
Yeah,
so if she, you know, obviously we are an omni business, but it's a little less than 10% of our total sales. So PetSmart, we pride ourselves on the experience. We have 1,600 stores, and
okay.
part of the role of the store is not just to be a place where she can go replenish her bag of food, but
Hmm.
if you walk into any PetSmart store, the center aisle, we call the drive aisle, is always, every single 365 days a year, it is always the fun, the seasonal, the unexpected, the moment where you're like, oh man, like I can't not buy this. This
Yeah,
is going to be so fun, and just that sort of sparks joy moment. And so it can't be cheap. Like it just can't be cheap because there are a million other retailers out there that can do that cheap. We want to
yeah,
make sure that it's something that, even though it's only 19.99, like it's a custom that she can wear year over year, and maybe next year, instead of the hot dog, she's going to keep that in her arsenal, but like upgrade to the sushi roll or whatever,
yeah.
so it can't be cheap.
Well, and the same thing too, going back to the point of taking care of our pets, taking care of our little friends, is that, um, you obviously don't want to make things cheap, from a material standpoint either, because you're protecting them, right? Like,
Exactly.
accidents happen. You got chewing, you got tearing, you got scratching, and everything else. And so, you want to make sure that your friends stay good and safe, and a stitch coming out doesn't lead to them, choking or anything else like that. And so I've always been impressed by, just again, the quality and just kind of that whole pet experience is what I kind of refer to it as. Just like, I know that I can walk in, get what I need. If I got questions, you got knowledgeable people. It's so good. It's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. I appreciate
So
that. Thank you.
you held up your device a while ago, and that was one thing too. Is like, I would imagine, as we kind of head into this more tech centric, world, right? And we're obviously, the pandemic pushed everything forward, but like, I think as we see things that we're getting more involved with now, right? It A lot of our lives, kind of exist around a phone. Is that kind of, would you say that's one of your challenge areas, that you're kind of looking at how to engage people more, or kind of what are some challenges facing PetSmart at this point? I know we talked inflation and everything, but, is there anything else that maybe is kind of coming down the pipeline for you
Yeah.
there?
I think, consumers are incredibly discerning. They
Mhm.
value, but they
Yep.
also value convenience. And
Yep.
so, we're never going to out Amazon. That's not what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Our advantage is about the experience, and 1,600 stores. We are less than 5 miles from about 75% of our pet parents.
Wow.
So you want to say convenient, like she can order it on her device and pick it up
Yeah.
from our store in less than an hour. But the
Yeah.
truth is, when you talk to our pet parents, they like coming to the store, and
Oh, yeah.
typically they come with their pet, and they have that moment, even if it's just 15 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
you'll see them walking down the treat aisle, and the dog's like sniffing all the different like bones and choosing the one that he wants, right? That's what you do with your dog. Or even in the toy aisle, they're like, throwing it and seeing what the dog likes or doesn't like. Like, that for us is like, that connection is what we're after. And that doesn't mean, digital is going to continue to be incredibly important.
Yeah.
We still have a big digital business. It is still a huge focus for us. And but it is really about the sort of totality of the experience. We have a really big services business. And so you can bring Shadow to PetSmart to get groomed. You can, bring her for a play date for the day. We have hotels, we have training. And so it's a really tactile experience. About half of our retail stores have a vet inside of them. And so we don't want just a transactional relationship.
Yeah.
We really want to build that whole relationship and really for the total care of the pet.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the thing too, is like you started naming stuff off. I knew like probably 3 of those things. And I was just like, but that you just kept going. And it's like, I don't think people realize, especially, folks who are maybe newer pet owners, or growing into a different pet, kind of pet or different breed or something. It's like, I don't think people realize just how many things are available at PetSmart. And so I think, to your point, it's like every time I go in, it's like I feel like I see something new, right?
Right.
And it's like, you're mentioning play dates, you're mentioning training, and I will say, I even remember, it's been a while since I've been in whenever they were doing a training session, but I remember the one here. It was very, very impressive, the level of trainers that y'all have as well, because I think a lot of people it'd be easy to think that, oh, okay, it's a kind of just a basics course, or something like that. And you do have the basics course, but you also have some trainers who really, really know what they're doing in behavioral, like conditioning and stuff, and just really dialing in some really cool tricks, really neat behaviors. And they're also invested in pet training throughout the rest of the community too. So
Yeah.
it's not just someone you only see in the store. You see them actually out in the public and doing their thing. And I just think that's really awesome.
Yeah,
So
it is. And I think, you asked about some of the like hurdles that we're sort of overcoming, and
yeah,
driving the digital capabilities is something that we're very focused on. But I think the biggest hurdle right now, not just for PetSmart, but for all of retail, is it just continues to be a really volatile environment. Like,
yeah,
inflation is still high. There's still uncertainty. There's just a lot going on in the mind of the consumer, and the markets don't like uncertainty. The consumer doesn't like uncertainty, right? And so it's our job is to make sure that I always say, like, we're solving the problems for the pet parent, but we're doing it in a way that allows us to deliver short-term results, but have our eye on like where we're headed for the long term, and making sure that we continue to invest in capabilities, whether it's digital or loyalty. We have 60 million pet parents in our loyalty program. It's huge. And it's
60.
60. Yes.
That's insane.
Huge. And so continuing to build out capabilities just to drive that engagement is something that continues to be really important. And so for us, it's about responding in the moment, but investing for the longer term. And that's really, I think, for all of retail, what we're trying to figure out today.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. This not, it's kind of in the notes, but also not really in the notes. Like, one of the things that we've seen and we've kind of been doing some reporting on lately, I know a lot of PetSmarts are in shopping malls or shopping centers, right? And
Mhm.
so I think for a while there, or, at least mall adjacent, I should say, but like, um, I think for a while, over the last 20 years or so, malls kind of took a downturn. But one thing we're seeing and that we've been reporting on is that malls are kind of making a comeback in that physical presence. To your point, like I think people saw the excitement of digital and were like, "Oh, cool! I don't have to go out and see stuff." But then, the more you're in a digital only environment, you really want the omni experience, right? You want to be able to go out and take the dog. I want to take Shadow down the
Yeah,
aisle and go, "Hey, which one do you actually want?" Because
right.
if I'm spending money on this, I want to make sure you actually enjoy it,
Yeah.
right? And so I'll take her in. I'll let her run down there. If she finds a treat, if she finds a ball, if whatever, we'll sit there and play with it for a second. And I always feel like the kid that's like riding the bike in Walmart. And it's like, should I really be doing this? Yes, it's you're trying to make sure that its size and
Yes,
everything else works the way you want
right,
it to work.
right.
So I think, have you seen, is there any resurgence that you're seeing in those specific, like the retail center, like the shopping center areas? Are more people coming back, or is that, what's the trend that you're seeing there?
Yeah, I think, we are really lucky in that when we built out the 1,600 stores, we really looked at where, and obviously over the last 20 years, you've seen that evolve. You've seen people sort of go more suburbs and then come back more urban.
Yeah.
We have an incredibly diverse portfolio, and it really is focused on where the pet parents are. So, yes, we are seeing a resurgence in the shopping mall. Yes, we're also seeing a resurgence into urban centers. So,
Okay.
we have smaller formats in really big cities. I mean, we have a store in the middle of downtown New York. So, we have a format that is flexible enough that it can be responsive given what's happening with the local demographic. But we're fortunate in that as we've expanded over time, we've we've I will say not been penny wise and pound foolish, meaning we'll spend a little bit more to be in a more resilient shopping area that has retail that is going to stand the test of time, which
Yeah.
means that you don't put a store there and then 20 years later you regret it.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're bailing out at that point, and then you're trying to backfill a hole. You're trying to figure out how to help the employees that you brought in at that point, and
Exactly.
yeah, it can be very weighty, right?
Yeah.
There's those decisions. That is one thing I can honestly say I don't recall. This is totally off script. I don't recall the last time I saw a PetSmart go out of anywhere.
Yeah,
I
there
really
aren't
don't.
very many. There aren't very many.
Yeah,
And part of that is because we recognize a couple of things. One is we recognize the responsibility that we have to the community. And
yeah.
if you go in a PetSmart, like our our associates know the pets and know the pet
Oh yeah,
parents, and they will say if you come in without Shadow, they will literally say to you, tell Shadow I said hello. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
they are there. That is what they are ingrained in the community, and that's something they
Yeah.
take really seriously.
Well, and it's funny because if you go to any of your competitors, not that I would ever have done that in the past
Yes.
accidentally, but if you do go into some of the competitors, right, you specifically, let's say supermarkets that may dabble in fish occasionally, they don't know. They don't know.
Mhm.
It's somebody who doesn't care. They got stationed in that area for that time. I will not forget that there was the girl that was helping me last time. My son wanted some fish. He was younger. He's 12 now, but he was like, I want to say 6, and he wanted to try some fish, right? We got him some goldfish. We also got him some little neon tetras. And I walked in completely
Yeah.
dumb, right?
Yes.
I knew nothing. I'm like, what do I need to do here? Do I just get water in the bowl? And she's like, oh no, no, sir, you need to condition the water. You need to get it to let it sit for a while and room temp and all. She was so knowledgeable. She knew exactly what to do. the fish thrived until we moved and couldn't care for them anymore. And so we said, okay, hey, let's give them to some friends. But,
Mhm.
otherwise, I firmly attribute that to her because she was able to say, hey, here's how you care for them.
Yeah.
Come back. If you need anything else, you might try this. You might add this in. You might do this. You might not need that,
Yeah.
and that's the other side too, is knowing when you're an expert in something, when to say, hey, you can try this. It's not required. You don't have to have that,
Yeah.
but it works really well for most people, and so that's really good.
No, I love that story, and that really resonates. I think, what I really appreciate about our associate base is they are incredibly knowledgeable. We invest a tremendous amount of money and energy and
Yeah.
effort making sure that they can guide you to make sure that you have a really successful experience with your kids and a new hobby like fish. Like, how horrible
Yeah.
would it be for you as a dad to have to explain to him the next morning that something went wrong? Like, we don't want that. I
Or
think,
explaining fishy heaven 24 hours
yeah,
later.
that's horrible. We don't want that to happen. I think one of my favorite stories, we do this thing we call voice of associate, where we'll travel to a market and we'll have all the associates just share with us, like, what's working, what do they need, what can we do better. And just to show you how much our associates know,
Yeah.
we had one associate pull up with a Top Fin, I mentioned, is like the largest fish brand in the marketplace. And
Okay.
she pulled up the box of an aquarium. And she's like, I can't remember exactly. Maybe it was a 5-gallon tank. And she's
Yeah.
like, there should be no more than 2 fish in this tank, and there's three fish pictured on the packaging.
Yeah.
She's like,
Yeah.
this is not safe. And I'm like, you know what? You're right. And so we
You're
took it
absolutely
back and
right.
we went to the marketing team and we fixed it. But it's like, those details matter. And our associate base is so passionate about making sure we uphold the absolute highest standard of pet health that,
Yeah.
and look, we don't always get it right, but we have a team that is so dialed in to making sure that we do right by the pet that we're all helping each other be better, which I love.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the other thing too. Your PetSmart's really involved in community too, right? Like as far as charitable giving and
Yeah.
kind of giving back to communities, right? What's some of the stuff that that PetSmart's currently doing in that area? Just as far as a community involvement, even.
Yeah. I mean, we have a 501(c) arm to our business, which is called PetSmart Charities. Um, we have adopted over 10 million pets into people's homes. So we are the number one adoption partner across the United States, which is
Oh yeah.
really, really exciting. Um, it's something that it's a huge part of like what we do at PetSmart. On the merchandising side, we love to support that business. So when you check out a PetSmart, on the pin pad, you can choose to donate $1 or a couple of dollars to PetSmart Charities if you want to. But we also build it into some of our assortment. So we have a collection called Chance and Lucky. They're little
Mm-hmm.
stuffed animal toys. They're $5, and every time we sell one, we donate $1 of the $5 to PetSmart Charities. And just to give you perspective, we have that program in 3 or 4 seasons. And so this Christmas, we have a Chance and Lucky program. We're going to sell 5 million units. That's $5 million that we are giving to PetSmart Charities to help pets in need. So PetSmart Charities not only helps adopt pets into homes, but they also help with relief efforts. So, when there is a natural disaster or a tornado or a fire or something like that, PetSmart Charities goes and tries to help the pets that are in need find either their owners or make sure that they're well cared for. So it's a huge part of our brand.
Oh, absolutely. I remember the stories coming out of like Katrina and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a huge impact there for y'all, and I thought that was tremendous effort. Just wow, yeah. It always sucks to see pets suffer, and so it's like it's really cool to see you guys doing such good stuff within the communities and being able to help care for them.
Yeah, well,
So
it's sort of our way to say, like, we love pets and we believe pets make us better people. Okay, well, let's just put our money where our mouth is and make sure that we're actually supporting that mission in a really material way.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. Well, I know we're kind of wrapping up a little bit here. I know unfortunately we've got to wind it down, but tell me a little bit about what is the horizon? What's on the horizon for PetSmart and pet category and retail pet and everything? I mean, what's coming down the pipeline for you that you're really excited for?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things. So I'm going to talk about food first because we haven't spent a lot of time talking about food. But
Okay.
one of the big trends in food, which is not going to be surprising to you, is the consumer is reading the ingredient label and they want
Yes.
more than just reconstituted cornmeal, right? Like,
Yep.
and so we're seeing categories like fresh and frozen really grow, where if you took a Simply Nourish bag and you turned it around in the frozen freezer aisle, the ingredient deck would literally say chicken.
Yeah. That's so good.
It's so
It's,
good.
it,
And it's so good for your pet. And so we're really focused on making sure that our assortment has, we will always have the largest assortment of consumables that you can get at a retail store. But we also want to make sure that we're educating pet parents on what they're putting into their pet from a nourishment perspective. And Simply Nourish is one of our proprietary brands, and it has a really clean ingredient deck. It's super simple. It's easy for your pet to digest. And it gives them energy. It makes their coat look amazing, helps with their joints. So we're really focused on the nutrition part of the food business. So that's, I think, one thing that I'm really excited about.
It's so good.
So good.
I got something fun to tell you after this too, but go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to hear the second thing.
The second thing, we talked a lot about dog on the go. We have a proprietary brand called Arcadia Trail. We launched it right as the pandemic was happening. And that was a moment where I was like, oh man, this is either going to be brilliant or not. And it turned out to be brilliant. And Arcadia Trail is really about adventuring with your pet. So, whether it's like a little tent for your pet, a little floating raft. I've talked about the cooling mat with the sunshade. There are really durable leashes and collars. There's, little floaties and life jackets and things like people want to be outside and adventure with their pet. I'm really excited about Arcadia Trail. We have a ton of innovation coming in that business. So stay tuned for that. And then, the last thing I would say is I didn't talk a ton about the specialty. We call it specialty business. So that would be aquatic, reptile, small animal, and bird. But those are really big businesses for us. And honestly, a lot of times you see parents bring their kids into the store because they want to look at the live pets. And so those are businesses that continue to grow for us. There's one proprietary brand in small animal called Full Cheeks. And what we understood when we looked at the assortment for habitats for these small animals is they were generally too small for the pet. What we see in health standards is these habitats need to be bigger. And so we spent a lot of time building this brand to not only make the habitat bigger for the health of the pet, but also make it beautiful to put in your house. And so I'm really excited about that proprietary brand. So if you're thinking about getting a chinchilla or a guinea pig, check out Full Cheeks.
Okay. All right. We'll have to check that one out for sure. Because, I mean, that's the thing is like, and it's funny you say chinchilla. So a good friend of mine had one for years, and it was just, it was the sweetest little thing. His name was Gus. It was super sweet. So,
They're sweet.
no, it's funny, to go back to your point about food stuff really quick. I think that's where another thing that has, in just an observation side, my wife and I, we're really attentive now to what's going into our pet's food, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny because for the longest time, you would just think, oh, it's a pet, right? They'll eat whatever. But then you start really paying attention, and especially if you got an aging dog, right? Just speaking to dogs specifically, just that's my experience. Like, as you start understanding more of what's in the food, and you start seeing dogs with more joint issues, more congestion issues or anything else. You're like, what is going on? Why are these pets having so much more difficulty now? And it's because for a while there, the pet food manufacturers were just kind of like, it's simple meal,
Right.
that's really it. And so it's funny because we're nowhere near on a scale of competing with you and my son. And I didn't even tell you this before this chat. My son has his own little dog treat business that he sells at the farmers market. And one thing that people love is how basic we try to keep stuff, right?
Yeah.
Same thing as, you mentioned having the frozen stuff or the fresher foods that has real chicken
Yes.
as an ingredient. And so, he's got beef and blueberry. He's got these different things that are really good for pets, dogs specifically in our case, and so it's really funny because that's one of the biggest things that we recognized as he's a big dog lover. He's a big pet lover. He loves cats too. We stopped by a local shelter and built a cat house one day. That was really funny.
That's awesome.
But it was like, how do we do something that's going to be, where people are, right? How are we
Yeah.
going to meet people in the need that they have? And it's,
Right.
that's exactly what PetSmart's doing. I just love seeing that. And ultimately, yeah, that's one of the biggest things we recognize is people caring more about those details. And I think this goes back to the private label, toy brand as well, and everything is watching what's in the toy, right? Because people are more aware of a squeaker
Mhm.
coming out. They're more aware of a plastic pull tab or something like that breaking off and maybe causing an issue. So I think it's really great to have that built in now. And you guys, it sounds like PetSmart's doing a really great job of building that in from the grassroots up,
Mhm.
right? And so it's like when you start designing those products, those foods, those toys, funny enough, I saw the Arcadia Trail dog backpack carrier, and so I'm like, that's so good.
Yes.
But it seems like everything is thought through very, very carefully on how it's going to impact both pet and pet owner alike.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
Yeah. It's our mission.
Well, this has been super good, and I almost hate to cut it off, but I know we're coming up on like that almost an hour now. So I feel like, well, people need to reach out to you, right? They need to get to know you better, and if they want to follow you, I'd imagine they can follow you on LinkedIn, right?
We can.
So
Yep.
kind of see what you're up to. Do her a favor though, if you do reach out and try to connect with her. Be sure and tell her you heard about her here on the podcast, so she knows you're a real person.
Yes. Please do that.
Yeah, do that because we all know that we get probably like 40 friend requests or connection requests, I should say, on
Should
LinkedIn
I
every
expect to
day.
hear from your son trying to sell me
Um,
dog treats?
Maybe, I don't know. He might reach out and be like, "Hey, what
Okay.
do you got?" He'll be on that hustle.
That's
But
right. I love that.
no, it's so good to see and just hear everything that's going on with PetSmart because I think it's funny we can get so wrapped up, specifically in retail, we get so wrapped up in the human categories, right?
Mhm.
And I was so looking forward to this conversation because pet is something that's near and dear to me, and so I just love hearing that. And thanks for taking time for
Well,
us.
thank you. We appreciate the opportunity. Obviously, I love talking about pets as well. So it's great to have the conversation with you, Brian, and we just appreciate the opportunity. So
Absolutely. And of course, you said, like if anybody wants to get involved in the PetSmart, like the Pet Perks program, right?
yes,
60 million people.
yes,
Oh my gosh, that's a lot.
yes. Download the app. You can start right
Yeah,
now.
check it out. I'll actually, is there a link for the app or is it just on the PetSmart website that they can kind of go and
Yeah,
like
you can go to the
click
PetSmart
and download
website. You can
from
go
it?
to the App Store. Just
All
download
right,
the
I'm going to put
PetSmart
that
app.
down in the description. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be in the notes down here.
Okay, great.
So.
Perfect.
Well, thank you, Kristin. We really appreciate you joining us here. Again, if this is your first episode of the Retail Wire podcast, thank you so much for joining us. I really, really appreciate you. Be sure and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another great episode. Also, if you for some reason want to see what Kristin and I look like in this episode, not only can you listen to us across all your favorite podcasting platforms, but Kristin, they can head over to our Retail Wire YouTube channel
Okay.
and they can see us on there.
Okay,
So,
let's do that.
you'll get to see everything and the gorgeous view behind you. What you're in your office, right?
Yes.
There at work?
Yes,
That's
in
like
Phoenix.
gorgeous.
So we've got palm trees and
So jealous.
it looks good when you're sitting in air conditioning, but as you know, it's a little warm in Phoenix right now.
Yeah, you're in those triple digits right now. I
Yeah.
think we're if you're wondering when we're recording this, it's late summer in 23 here, and yeah, dog days of summer, no pun intended, are fully here. So
Awesome.
zing. All right. Well, I'll see myself out now, and thank you so much again for joining us. But yeah, head over to our YouTube channel if you want to see that. That's youtube.com/@RetailWire. And also, yeah, be sure and connect with Kristin here on LinkedIn. And we'll see you next time here on the Retail Wire podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to the Retail Wire podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting platform and leave us a comment for a chance to hear it read on the next show. See you next time here on the Retail Wire podcast.